Hello and welcome to Digesting the Soul. Today I'm going to be discussing the topic of relocation astrology. And basically that is asking the question, can a change in your geography create change in your life? Change is different from the natal chart that you were born with. So I will be using my own relocation chart for you as an example, and this will specifically be focusing on health and well-being in a chart. But for you, maybe love and romance is a focus for you, maybe career and success could be a focus, maybe starting a family. So there's so many different areas in your life that you could apply relocation astrology to. And at the end, I am going to give you information where you can cast your own relocation chart for free. And then in addition, I'll provide a website where you can literally, for a few dollars, get a very detailed description and order your own relocation chart. So a relocation chart, just like a natal chart in astrology, is going to require the date of your birth and the time of your birth. Except instead of entering your place of birth, you're going to enter in a brand new location. And the basic guideline is that when you begin to move away from where you were born at least 100 miles, then you're going to start to see changes in your natal chart. And if you move far enough away, then you have the potential for your ascendant sign to change, and even your midheaven. And I can use myself as an example. I was born on the East Coast, Pisces sun, Taurus ascendant, and I had my midheaven was in Capricorn. I currently live over 3,000 miles away from where I was born, and in this location I am now a Pisces ascendant and a Sagittarius midheaven. And what's really interesting, that every planet in my natal chart has shifted at least one or two houses. But it's important to note that the planetary degrees in your natal chart do not change. So for example, I was born with Jupiter at 5 degrees of Sagittarius, and it was in my 7th house. And now in my relocation chart, it's still the same, 5 degrees of Sagittarius, Jupiter at 5 degrees of Sagittarius, but is now shifted into my 9th house. So a relocation chart is looking at four major angles, and that would be the ascendant, which is the cusp of the first house. It's a house of self, how you present yourself to the world. Your descendant, which is the cusp of the 7th house, which would be your relationships, your committed partnerships. Your IC, which is on the cusp of the 4th house, and that is related to home and family. And then the mid house, which is the 10th house, which is your career and status. So I also want to reference you to the late astrologer Jim Lewis, who published, a fantastic book. To me, it is the book. It's called The Psychology of AstroCartoGraphy. This was published in 1997, and he goes in great depth, unlike anyone I've ever read, about these 4 angles, these planetary angles, and what they mean in a relocation chart. And basically what he devised was he created a system where he would map these lines on the world. And he would show you the different planetary energies defined related to the aspects within your own natal chart. So I definitely recommend that book. So if you're unfamiliar with astrology, or you just want to get a greater understanding of the planets and their energies and how they influence you. So basically, when it comes to the planets and you're looking to make a change in your life, there's planets probably that are more malefic, kind of more heavier planets, and then there's kind of what we perceive as the lighter planets, the more positive planets that you would want to live on those lines. So I would say right off the bat, probably a more difficult line to live under would be your Saturn line. It's basically generally known for restrictions and limitations. It's where you're going to do a lot of hard work. It's where you have a lot of responsibilities. You can experience delays. It's where you're going to have to develop a lot of discipline, and there's usually rules and authorities. And so that's kind of the essence of the Saturn line. Another heavy line would be your Pluto line, and this is like the powerhouse of like transformation, those like life and death experiences. Where Pluto is in the area of a chart is always going to add an intensity. It's also power struggles, and especially in the areas of money and sex, and it can enhance obsessions as well. Now, for me, Uranus, many people might want to live on a Uranus line, but for me it's kind of another one of the heavier lines. Uranus is about like sudden change, upheavals, it's the unexpected, and it's kind of where radical things can happen. It's where you're striving for liberation, for your own individuality. It's off the unbeaten path, as they say, I guess. Now, I won't go into all the planets, so I've kind of given you 3 examples of some heavier planetary lines. So if you cast your chart, you can look, do you have Saturn, Pluto, or Uranus? So you can compare it in your own life and what you've been experiencing. But usually if people are thinking about making a change, usually it's the areas of love. So that would be your Venus line. Venus rules love, beauty, art. It also rules money. You may want to go where your Mercury line is, especially if you're writing, if you're a presenter, a speaker, because Mercury is your communication. It's your mental processing. So it's speaking, it's writing, and also learning. And then I'd say the third planet that probably most people are looking is the sun. The sun is going to represent your vitality. It's your life force. It's an improvement in your self-esteem, your confidence. It's where you can shine and receive more recognition. And probably the other can be good or bad, whether it's balance or not. It would probably be Jupiter, because Jupiter is expansion. It's your inspiration. It's widening your horizons, identifying your own philosophy. It can be increase your luck, your hope, and your success. So for myself, using as an example, what I did was I got a relocation chart for my place of birth, and I got a relocation chart for where I'm currently living. And that way you can compare them side by side to see what the significant differences were. And to give you the backstory, from literally the moment I was born, I had a health crisis, and I had many health issues come up throughout childhood. And then when I hit 20 and it was away at college, I also was diagnosed with a chronic digestive issue. It's called ulcerative colitis. It's an inflammatory bowel issue. So for me, when I reflect on my life and I look at my natal chart, the things that I zone in obviously are my health and well-being. And when I looked at my natal chart, right away I had the 3 heavies, Pluto, Saturn, and Uranus. I have Pluto on my IC, I have Saturn on my ascendant, and Uranus on my descendant. And interestingly enough, Saturn is in my first house of self, and how I present myself to the world, and my physical body. And then I also had Uranus and Pluto together in my 6th house of health in my daily work routine. And so when I started to process this and put all of those elements together, it really was telling the story of exactly what I experienced about the first 25 years of my life. And that was a constant struggle with my health and my own image of wanting to be a healthy person, but perhaps others seeing me as a sick person. Because Uranus and Pluto were in my house of health in the 6th house, I was always struggling to, hold down a job, to be present at my job. Uranus is like the unexpected. Things were always happening. There was multiple hospitalizations there. Pluto is life or death. I would be so sick we didn't know what was going to happen. And interestingly enough, one of the more positive aspects in my natal chart at that location was my house of career. I had Capricorn in the 10th house. I had a lot of career success there. I had a lot of promotions. I was very, very driven. But with Saturn in my 1st house and Uranus and Pluto in my 6th house, it was like everything was twice as hard for me. I was struggling. It took more hard work and effort because what was already a difficult career, now I was doing it with a chronic illness and hospitalizations and missing time at work. I did have really good aspects there, though. I was on my Venus line, and there all of my major love relationships happened. That is where I met my husband and I got married. But if you're familiar with Kelly Rosano, who is a YouTube astrologer, she says one of the funniest lines, that your wealth is in your health. And I laugh when I hear that every time she says it, but it's absolutely true. No matter how much career success I had, and how much success in my love relationships I had, when you don't have good health and you're struggling with your body to get through your day and do your task, like you're not at work and you're not being socially active like you want to be. And so that struggle was very real. And when I looked at my relocation chart for my natal place of birth, it was obvious. So I was really excited to see why maybe I had begun to experience a lot of improvements in major areas of my life when I moved 3,000 miles away. And I have to note that I came to this, to researching more in depth relocation astrology, although I knew about it, I came to it in maybe a non-traditional way. I have moved around a lot since college. I've lived in several different states in the United States. And what happened was I had always relocated due to a job opportunity. So I was never looking at my astrology. A great job would come up and I would move. So when I moved to my current location, after a few years, a few other job opportunities came up to relocate, and I didn't want to. And this was really unusual for me. I was more of like really into travel, free-spirited. I liked going into new communities and experiencing the culture all around the United States, and I did not suddenly want to move. And I couldn't figure out, and I kind of really thought about it, and I thought, you know what, one of the tools I've used throughout my whole life is astrology, and sometimes it can provide guidance or the insight and answers into maybe why, something is going on in your life. So that's how I ordered a relocation chart for where I currently live, and I was absolutely surprised. To me, it makes perfect sense. Here I am, my natal sun is on my ascendant, which I've never experienced any other location that I had moved since moving away from my place of birth, and it's very strong. The place that I'm going to tell you about, where you can get your own relocation chart, will actually rate strong, medium, and weak, the aspects and the planetary lines. So my natal sun on my ascendant is extremely strong here. So that would be why the increase of vitality and health here, which I would say I have not had the sickness or the illness or any hospitalizations, nothing like I had experienced most of my life. And energized, truly the vitality of the sun. It was like before I had been like a plant in the shade that was kind of wilting and not doing well, and suddenly I was placed in the sun and I was watered and and I was growing. The other positive influence about my current location is that I am on my natal Venus is on my ascendant, which is also considered strong. My natal sun is on my midheaven, strong. I have my natal sun and Mercury on my descendant. I have my natal Jupiter squaring my ascendant. So there were a lot of really good positive changes. These are the planets that people hope to move to these planetary lines, and I can attest that my life really changed here. Things transformed. And what was really interesting is I'm also living on my Mercury line. It's very strong, and when I started reflecting on it, this has been a very busy place for me, which I embrace, and I really like it. There's a lot of communication. There's a lot of short trips. This is where I've done the most research, the most writing. I'm constantly emailing, texting, and I really thrive in this environment. And combined with my sun, combined with Jupiter, combined with Venus, and again, these will have aspects to your houses and to other planets, and that's why I suggest you do get a relocation chart, because just because if you're on your sun or your Venus, you may have other aspects that aren't so good. So you really do want to get that interpreted through a chart or consult with an astrologer. But overall, I have to say my life changed here. And what I've started doing now, because it's just so fascinating, is that since I've lived in several other states, I'm ordering those relocation charts and kind of doing a timeline. What were the events that occurred there? What was I experiencing there? Can I validate it through the astrology, through these major planetary angles that are now hitting my chart? So the first place for free, and I'll put a link to it, is if you go to astro.com, there's a way that you can cast your own relocation chart for free. And they also do a bit of astrocartography there, where you can actually get a map, a planetary map, and kind of generally see where your planetary lines are as well. So in the second place, and I think that this is just a wonderful, wonderful website. It's Cafe Astrology, and I just have my notes here. Yeah, it's cafeastrology.com. And this is a great resource if you're just trying to learn astrology or you have a question. It's amazing how much is on this website and how detailed it is. But they also offer charts, and a relocation chart, you can pick 2 cities, is only $6.95. What a deal this is. And it is detailed. And what I would recommend is do your place of birth, and then either where you're currently living, or if you're still living in your place of birth, then pick a place you've always wanted to go, and then start doing your own comparison. That's the only way you can know if the astrology rings true, if relocation is something that is applicable. And I know there are a lot of astrologers in my research. People are really divided, kind of controversial in this topic. Some people really believe in it, and they say it's guaranteed. My clients, again and again, what I advise them, they say is true. And there are other people who are like, no, your natal chart is it. You cannot change your astrology. And I do agree to that to a certain point. Like, I do think a natal chart is your some people refer to it as your DNA or your blueprint, your soul. And I think your natal chart is a tool where you can see what your natural gifts and talents, and maybe what you're here to learn and what your challenges are. When you really delve deep into astrology, and when you understand the planets and the signs and the houses and the angles and the degrees, and you start putting that all together, it takes a lifetime. I think it's something that you study your whole life, and you're always looking for examples, and you can always start with yourself. Only you know you, only you can validate the information. So I think I've covered everything. I kind of get off on a tangent. I just find it so fascinating, astrology. And I do think that if you're not a professional like myself, definitely go to an astrologer, get a report. If you go to Cafe Astrology and get your relocation chart, it will have, really lovely paragraphs. My relocation charts were anywhere from 13 pages as much as 22 pages. And I think at that point, before you make any major move in your life, you probably do want to consult with an astrologer, because they will understand the more nuances, what the houses mean in relation to the planets, things you might overlook because you might just see, oh, my Venus line, I want to get married, I want to move there. But there may be other issues also in that chart that you're unaware of, that someone who's a professional can give you guidance. I know some astrologers, you could just ask them, where's the best location for me, and they will do it, as opposed to you giving them location. So just check online. There are astrologers who specifically focus on relocation. The other thing I just wanted to mention about the cafeastrology.com relocation charts is that they also include a small relocation map showing you the planetary lines and the aspects. They'll show you the relocation wheel, and they will also have a relocation scoring graph, which I found really fascinating. And then at the very end, they will give you, for I think it looks like the next year, your transits and progressions, which are really always fascinating, interesting. That's kind of like a bonus to have at the end. So I hope that wasn't confusing and I gave you just enough information, food for thought, if you want to explore this topic of relocation further. So if you have had any positive experience, I guess even negative experience, any experience at all using relocation astrology that you feel that you can validate, please share those with me. Today, I haven't met anybody who's actually used astrology and compared to all the places they lived to validate whether that was accurate for them or not. So, as always, I'm wishing everyone great health and all the best, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care.